This morning, the United States Senate didn't quietly gavel into session like any other day. It exploded into chaos. In a scene that even seasoned lawmakers described as unprecedented, 18 Republican senators crossed party lines and joined all 51 Democrats to advance articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. Not months from now, not after an election, now, and not led by the opposition party, but by members of his own. For the first time in American history, a sitting president is facing removal from office because his own political allies say the evidence against him is simply too serious to ignore. This isn't symbolic protest. It isn't partisan theater. It isn't another cable news outrage cycle that fades in a week. The senators driving this effort are the same people who defended Trump through every past scandal, every investigation, even 2 previous impeachments. These are loyalists, career defenders, lawmakers who once dismissed every controversy as politics as usual. And today, they're saying they may have been wrong. When politicians who built their reputations protecting a president suddenly start talking about betrayal of oath and country, something fundamental has broken. Behind closed doors, in a classified intelligence briefing that lasted hours, senators from both parties reportedly sat in stunned silence. Some walked out shaken. Others called emergency meetings. Within hours, the political foundation supporting this presidency began to crack. When senior Republican leadership co-sponsors impeachment articles alongside Democrats, you're not watching routine politics anymore. You're watching a political earthquake. Because if these votes hold, this doesn't end with headlines. It ends with a real trial, real evidence, and a real possibility that a sitting president could be removed from power. And if you want clear, step-by-step coverage of how we got here and what happens next, make sure you're subscribed and stay with me, because what triggered this revolt, what senators say they saw inside that classified room, changes everything. So what exactly happened inside that building to make loyal Republicans turn on their own president almost overnight? Because this didn't begin with a cable news leak or a partisan shouting match on the Senate floor. It wasn't triggered by activists or polling or another symbolic protest vote that everyone knew would die along party lines. What set this off started behind closed doors, deep inside the secure chambers of the United States Senate, in a classified facility where phones are confiscated, staff are locked out, and every screen is protected by the highest security clearance. Early on the morning of January 20th, senators were summoned to what was described as a mandatory intelligence briefing, and not a quick update either. This one lasted 4 full hours. By the time it ended, according to lawmakers from both parties, the mood in the room had completely changed. For weeks, the Senate Intelligence Committee, chaired by Mark Warner, had been quietly examining reports of unauthorized disclosures of sensitive information. At first, it looked routine, the kind of oversight investigation that rarely escapes committee rooms. But intelligence officials began flagging something far more serious, something they characterized as a grave and immediate threat to national security. That language alone was enough to bring the entire Senate in. The briefing was delivered by Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines alongside NSA Director Timothy Ha, and what they presented wasn't speculation or hearsay. It was raw intelligence, intercepted communications, financial tracking records, internal reports, and sworn testimony from national security officials. For 4 straight hours, senators sat in near silence as analysts walked them through what they described as a 6-month pattern of conduct tied directly to Donald Trump. Not policy disagreements, not controversial diplomacy, but alleged actions that crossed into something much darker. According to several lawmakers who later spoke carefully without revealing classified details, the evidence suggested Trump had personally authorized the sharing of highly classified signals intelligence, information about U.S. surveillance capabilities, military positioning, and collection methods with representatives of a foreign government. And what truly stunned the room wasn't just the disclosure itself, it was the motive. Officials reportedly laid out timelines showing that sensitive intelligence briefings were followed, sometimes within days, by major financial movements connected to Trump Organization projects overseas. Dates lined up, transfers followed. The same pattern repeated again and again. One senator described leaving the room as feeling like walking out of a funeral. Another said members looked physically shaken. People who had defended the president for years suddenly had nothing to say to reporters. No spin, no talking points, just silence. And when senior Republicans skipped the cameras and headed straight into emergency closed-door meetings, you could sense it immediately. Something fundamental had shifted. Because this wasn't politics anymore. This wasn't partisan theater. This was intelligence evidence that, if accurate, pointed to a president trading national security secrets for personal benefit. And within hours of that 4-hour briefing ending, the first cracks inside the Republican Party began to spread. What senators saw inside that classified briefing wasn't rumor, speculation, or partisan interpretation. It was raw intelligence, the kind of evidence that national security agencies rarely show even to lawmakers. According to officials from the National Security Agency, analysts had intercepted and decrypted multiple communications directly involving Donald Trump himself. Not summaries written by aides. Not secondhand testimony. His actual voice. His actual messages. Secure calls, encrypted chats, private exchanges with representatives of a foreign government. And what stunned the room wasn't just that the president was talking, it was what he was talking about. In those transcripts, Trump allegedly referenced highly classified intelligence explicitly, acknowledging in plain language that the information was sensitive, restricted, and not meant to be shared. Yet he shared it anyway. Specific collection systems, precise capabilities, surveillance methods tied to U.S. operations in the South China Sea, the kind of secrets that take decades and billions of dollars to develop. Programs so compartmentalized that many senators don't normally have clearance to view them, which meant one thing. This wasn't accidental. He knew exactly what he was revealing. But here's where it crossed a line from reckless to explosive. Several of those communications reportedly linked the disclosures directly to personal leverage. Intelligence officials described moments where Trump discussed what foreign officials wanted to know, then immediately pivoted to business approvals and development projects tied to his private organization. Not diplomacy, not national interest, business. That connection changed the entire tone of the briefing, because this stopped being a policy dispute and started looking like a transaction. Intelligence for profit, secrets for deals. Senators later called the intercepts irrefutable, complete with timestamps, decrypted transcripts, and corroboration across multiple channels. No ambiguity, no interpretation, just hard signals intelligence displayed on a secure screen. And as lawmakers quietly left that room, several said the same thing. If those communications are authentic, this isn't just impeachable, it's unprecedented. And then came the part of the briefing that, according to multiple senators in that room, changed everything: the money. Because intelligence intercepts are alarming, yes, but money is concrete. Money leaves a trail. Money doesn't lie. Treasury Department investigators walked the Senate through what they described as a clear, repeatable pattern, not a coincidence, not speculation, but a sequence that happened again and again over 6 months. First, classified intelligence is allegedly disclosed. Then, within days, massive financial transfers follow. Not weeks, not months, days. One example stood out immediately. On August 12th, according to declassified portions of the report, sensitive signals intelligence was shared with representatives of a foreign government. 3 days later, just 3 wire transfers totaling $847 million began moving into accounts tied to projects associated with the Trump organization. Senators described the timing as impossible to ignore. And that wasn't an isolated incident. Investigators traced roughly $2.3 billion in transfers across multiple entities during that same 6-month window. The same structure, the same rhythm: disclosure, then payment. Disclosure, then payment. Over and over. In total, officials identified 11 separate instances where the flow of money closely followed alleged intelligence exposure. According to members of the Banking and Intelligence Committees, the pattern resembled what prosecutors call a textbook quid pro quo, something they normally see in organized crime or foreign bribery cases, not the Oval Office. One senator reportedly said, "If this were any contractor or officer, we'd already be talking about indictments." And that's when the room shifted, because this wasn't about interpretation anymore. This wasn't about politics. This was spreadsheets, timestamps, wire confirmations, treasury tracking numbers. Hard evidence, verifiable, documented. At that moment, several Republican senators realized this wasn't just suspicious, it was prosecutable. And just when senators believed the intercepted communications and the massive financial transfers were already devastating enough, the classified briefing delivered something even more powerful, something far harder to argue with, something human, not signals intelligence, not spreadsheets, not analysts interpreting data, witnesses, 4 separate national security officials who came forward independently through protected whistleblower channels. 2 military officers, 1 NSA analyst, and 1 member of the White House National Security Staff. They didn't coordinate. They didn't know each other. They filed their reports months apart. And yet, according to senators in that room, their stories aligned with chilling precision. Each described similar meetings, similar conversations, similar moments where the president allegedly discussed highly classified capabilities in casual, transactional terms. Satellite coverage, signals collection methods, sensitive operational details that normally never leave a secure facility, information that, if exposed, could compromise missions and endanger lives. These weren't political appointees speculating about motives. These were trained professionals whose entire careers revolve around safeguarding secrets, people who instantly recognize when lines are being crossed. One declassified excerpt reportedly stunned the chamber into silence. A witness recalled the president saying, "They want to know what we can see from orbit. I'll tell them what they want to know if they approve the Jakarta project. Not diplomacy, not strategy. A deal. Secrets exchanged for business concessions. National security treated like leverage." And what made it even more damning was the risk these officials took. Coming forward meant jeopardizing careers, clearances, reputations, even personal safety. There was nothing to gain and everything to lose. Yet they testified anyway. Their accounts matched the intercepted communications. They matched the financial transfers. Independent evidence converging from every direction. At that point, several senators later admitted the question stopped being whether something improper had happened. The only question left was how long it had been happening. Because when recordings, money trails, and sworn testimony all tell the same story, this isn't politics anymore. It isn't speculation. It's evidence. And for many Republicans in that room, that was the moment denial finally collapsed. What happened next is the moment this story stopped looking like another partisan fight and started looking like a full-blown political rupture for Donald Trump. Because the real shock didn't come from Democrats. It came from inside his own party. Within 2 hours of that classified intelligence briefing ending, senators didn't head to cameras or press conferences. They moved quietly, quickly, into a secure room deep inside the United States Senate. 17 Republicans answered an emergency call. No phones, no aides, no leaks. Just lawmakers who had spent years defending this president now sitting face to face with evidence they could not explain away. The meeting was organized by Mitt Romney, and according to staffers outside the hallway, the mood wasn't angry or theatrical. It was heavy, somber, almost stunned. Romney reportedly broke the silence first, telling colleagues plainly that what they had just seen wasn't politics or policy disagreement, but a betrayal of oath and country, and that if they failed to act, history would judge them as complicit. Then something few people in Washington ever expected happened. Lindsey Graham, one of Trump's most consistent defenders, stood up. Witnesses say his voice cracked. He admitted he had justified controversy after controversy because he believed the president was fighting for conservative goals. But this, he said, wasn't defensible. This wasn't strategy. This crossed a line. Moments later, Marco Rubio, who sits on the Intelligence Committee and had reviewed even deeper classified material, delivered the coldest assessment in the room. The intelligence was irrefutable. Intercepts, financial transfers, witnesses prepared to testify. If this conduct didn't meet the standard for impeachment, nothing ever would. That statement changed everything. The debate ended. The arithmetic began. The meeting lasted just 90 minutes. But when those senators walked out, they weren't weighing options anymore. They were drafting articles of impeachment themselves, bypassing the House because they believed delay meant complicity. Two charges took shape: betrayal of national security and obstruction of Congress. By midnight, it was official. Republicans weren't protecting Trump, they were leading the case against him. And if you're realizing how historic that shift is, stay with me, because once a president loses his own party, survival stops being loyalty and starts being math, and those numbers are about to get very uncomfortable. What began as a political scandal has now escalated into something far more dangerous, far more destabilizing, and far more historic than anything Washington has seen in decades. This is no longer just about one president, one party, or one impeachment vote inside the United States Senate. According to lawmakers who emerged from that classified briefing, this has crossed into the realm of national survival. Because if the allegations are even partially true, the damage isn't political theater or partisan infighting, it's structural, it's systemic, and it strikes directly at the foundation of American security. Senators from both parties reportedly walked out of that secure room visibly shaken. Some refused to speak at all. Others described what they had just seen with words like grave, immediate, and catastrophic. Not disagreements over policy, not arguments over foreign relations strategy, but threats to active military operations, intelligence networks, and human sources whose lives could now be in jeopardy. The classified material allegedly shared wasn't symbolic or outdated. It involved real-time signals, intelligence, surveillance capabilities in contested regions, and collection methods that took decades and billions of taxpayer dollars to build. And once those capabilities are exposed, they don't simply reset. Once adversaries learn how you spy, you lose the ability to spy forever. That's why constitutional scholars are now invoking language we haven't seriously heard since the 1970s. Lawrence Tribe described the accusations as the most clear-cut, impeachable conduct imaginable, warning that the founders created impeachment specifically for moments like this, when a president allegedly uses the authority of the office for personal enrichment while endangering national security. Not incompetence, not controversy, but betrayal of oath. Former intelligence officials are even more blunt. John Brennan pointed out that if any CIA officer had shared classified information in exchange for financial benefit, they wouldn't face a political debate. They'd face criminal charges. They'd face prosecution. They'd likely spend decades behind bars. Because that's not politics, that's espionage. And perhaps most striking, even figures who once defended this administration are now distancing themselves. William Barr acknowledged publicly that if the allegations are proven, they would represent a fundamental violation of the presidential oath. In other words, there are lines so serious that party loyalty simply can't protect you. Meanwhile, the consequences are already rippling outward. Senate business has slowed to a near standstill. Confirmations are frozen. Appropriations are delayed. Cabinet officials quietly question whether to follow directives from a president who might be removed within weeks. Military commanders wonder whether operational plans could already be compromised. Foreign allies begin asking a chilling question. If the United States can't safeguard its own secrets, can it safeguard ours? That's why comparisons to Richard Nixon and Watergate are growing louder by the day, though some senators argue this may be even more serious. Watergate was about abuse of power. This is about potential exposure of national defense itself. And the public feels it too, with polling showing nearly 2/3 of Americans want a full trial with witnesses, including a significant share of Republicans. So this is the moment the country now faces, not politics as usual, not partisan spectacle, but a real test of whether the constitutional system still works, or whether the guardrails protecting American democracy are beginning to fail. Now the story enters its final and most dangerous stage. For the first time in modern history, the United States Senate isn't debating taxes, judges, or spending bills. It is preparing to judge a president. Within 2 weeks, 100 senators will take an oath and sit as jurors in an impeachment trial that could remove Donald Trump from office. Not a reprimand, not a symbolic vote, removal. The math is brutally simple and politically terrifying. 67 votes to convict. 51 Democrats are already expected to vote yes. 18 Republicans have broken ranks. That means just 16 more defections could end this presidency. 16 votes now stand between Trump and history. Behind closed doors, The most sensitive evidence in the federal government will be presented: intercepted communications, classified intelligence reports, financial transfers traced by Treasury investigators, and sworn testimony from national security officials. Senators will see material the public never can. Witnesses may testify, intelligence officers may speak, and for weeks, Washington will effectively grind to a halt as the trial consumes everything. But here's the twist that makes this even more precarious. Trump's own response may be costing him the very votes he needs. Instead of persuading wavering Republicans, he's attacking them, calling them traitors, threatening primaries, daring them to defy him. Every outburst hardens opposition. Every attack pushes another senator toward conviction. The clock is ticking, and the coalition against him may be growing, not shrinking. And now the entire country waits, because this isn't just about one president's survival. It's about whether the Constitution still works when it's tested the hardest, whether national security matters more than party loyalty, whether accountability still means anything at all. The articles are filed. The trial is coming. History is about to be written in that chamber. So stay with this story, and if you want clear, straight to the point updates as it unfolds, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next.